Did you know that some of the biggest decisions you make as an adult may have been influenced bigly by experiences that you had before you even understood what was happening to you? I want you to think about that for a second. The way you handle relationships right now, the way you react to criticisms in this present moment, the way you trust people or struggle to even trust them in the first place, the way you deal with failure, rejection, conflict, and even success. Sometimes we think we are making these choices completely on our own. But the truth is, many of them were shaped years ago in moments we barely even remember. All right, a little boy grows up in a home, for example, where every mistake is met with shouting. He spills a glass of milk right here and he gets yelled at. He gets a question wrong, you know, and he's told he is not trying hard enough. How many people think about the primary school they went to? And as he grows way older, he becomes the adult who apologizes for literally everything. And most of these things, he didn't even do it. You see, the adult here is someone who is terrified of even making mistakes in the first place. The adult who feels a little anxious every time his boss asks to speak with him, for example, you know. Or let's talk about this little girl also who grows up feeling very invisible. Her parents provide food, shelter, and everything that she needs physically, but emotionally, they are never really there. She learns not to ask for help. She learns to keep her feelings to herself. So, years later, she's the person who says, I'm fine. When she's falling apart and everything inside of her is not working out. And because somewhere along the way, she learned that nobody was coming to comfort her, anyways. So she sticks with the term, I'm fine. Everything is fine. Don't worry about me. I'm okay. She's not okay. Childhood has a strange way of following us in one way or another. If you're new to this channel, my name is Caleb Ngeno, and welcome to the Triage Table podcast. And today we are talking about childhood experiences and how they shape our adult lives today. So sit back and let's have a discussion. And I would like you to leave a comment below if this thing resonates with you, and let's have a discussion. Let's see how this applies to us as adults. All right. Now, before you think this is another conversation about, like blaming parents for everything, that's not what this episode is about. This is about understanding ourselves, because you cannot heal what you don't even understand in the first place. I don't think it works out like that. And sometimes the person we are trying to understand most is ourselves. And one of the biggest myths I will tend to think about is people tend to believe that childhood only matters when something dramatic happened. People think trauma only means things like this crazy things like abuse, violence, or something like a major tragedy that targeted you while you were growing up. Well, that could be another thing, yeah, which is really a big thing. And I'm sorry for the people who really went through that. But you see, sometimes childhood wounds are much quieter than that. Sometimes they are found in what actually didn't happen. The affection you never received, for example, the encouragement that you never had, the emotional support that never actually came by, the moments when you needed someone and nobody actually noticed that. There's a story I had about a man who spent years wondering why he constantly felt, the need to prove himself. Every achievement wasn't enough. Every promotion felt a little bit temporary, and every compliment felt unbelievable. So eventually, during the therapy, he realized something. And when he was a child, the only time he received praise from his father was when he performed exceptionally well. When he got an A, uh, w- he was actually noticed. So when he won a competition, for example, he was celebrated. But ordinary days when there was nothing to celebrate about, there was nothing. His father didn't do anything. In fact, maybe he criticized them much more than he was supposed to. So without realizing it, he grew up believing that love had to be earned. There was a lot of earning that had to take place. That's what he thought in his mind. So he spent his adulthood chasing achievements, hoping the next success will finally make him feel unworthy. But the feeling never came because the problem wasn't actually his accomplishments. The problem was the belief that he learned as a child. And that's what childhood experiences often do. They do create this crazy beliefs. Uh, it is beliefs about ourselves, and beliefs about other people, beliefs about the world. And once those beliefs settle in, we often carry them for decades without even questioning them in the first place. Um, so maybe they grew up hearing constant criticism, and constant criticism was the topic of the day during the time they were growing up. Now, you criticize yourself more harshly right now than anyone else could ever do because that's the language you understand. Maybe you grew up in an unpredictable environment. You struggle with anxiety because your brain learned that danger can appear at any moment. And maybe you grew up watching conflict every single day. And now you avoid difficult conversations because conflict feels a little bit threatening, if I can say that, even when it isn't in the first place. Um, the child grows up, but the lesson actually remains. What's fascinating actually is how often we don't connect the dots. We just think, this is who I am. This is who I have grown up to be. I'm naturally a very anxious person, or I am naturally a very insecure person. I am naturally quite a distant person. But sometimes those things aren't really your personality. They are what we call psychologically, they are survival strategies. Yeah, survival strategies actually. Think about that. Um, a child who learns that expressing emotions leads to rejection may stop expressing emotions altogether. That strategy helps them survive childhood. But what happens when they become adult? Now they struggle to connect with partners. This is someone who has gotten married, and they are having trouble getting a connection between them and their spouses because they never learned to in the first place. They struggle to be vulnerable. They struggle to let people in. And this strategy that protected them as a child starts hurting them as an adult. And this happens more often than actual people tend to realize it. Um, I remember hearing about a woman who couldn't understand why every relationship feels quite exhausting most of the time. And every time her partner didn't text back immediately, for example, panic started setting in. And when panic sets in, it was really crazy for her. Every small disagreement felt like the relationship was actually going to end in the next minute. She constantly needed someone to reassure her, with like her partner. Eventually, she realized that growing up, her caregivers were inconsistent. Some days they were loving, other days they didn't really care. Other days they were very distant. And as a child, she never knew what version of them she will get, you know? And so there is still something in her brain that became hyper alert, that every time she is within herself, she starts doing crazy, crazy things like always scanning. Like she's hyper alert, she's always scanning, always watching, and always actually preparing. Years later, the same pattern actually shows up in our romantic relationships. The circumstances actually changed, but emotional wiring stayed the same. And maybe you are listening right now, and pieces of your story are starting to probably make sense, right? I just hope it's making sense though, because this is exactly what many people are going on with, or maybe you're realizing that your fear of abandonment didn't appear out of nowhere, you know. Maybe you're realizing also that your need for approval has deeper roots. And maybe you're realizing that some of the battles you're fighting today began very many years ago. And I wouldn't really say that you're a weak person, or not also because you're, let's say, broken, you know, but because you're human. Human beings learn from experiences, especially early experiences. Another thing I will say childhood shapes is how we see ourselves right now. Imagine two children. One grows up hearing, "You can do this. I believe in you. You can do this." But the other one grows up hearing, "You'll never amount to anything, you know." But, well, years pass, both become adults. And do you think those words disappeared? I don't think so myself. I think they don't disappear. Words become beliefs and identities also, beliefs, like, they turn into identities, and identities is what I literally think it shapes behavior in one way or another. I don't know how, I still don't understand how that is connected, but I know it shapes behavior. It is amazing how adults are still carrying sentences spoken to them decades ago. Probably it was a teacher in your seventh grade. It was a comment that he said about you, or a parent's criticism, or a sibling's insult, or a moment of humiliation, for example. And one sentence, just like that, and you can't forget about it. It shaped you, it affected you, and it changed the way you are for many years. It's been probably 15 years right now, but you still haven't moved on from that. Sometimes we become exactly who we were told we were, right? Other times we spend our entire lives trying to prove those words wrong. Either way, the impact remains. And there is something quite very important. Not all childhood experiences shape us negatively. Many shape us beautifully. You know, there's that parent who listened when you were growing up. They listened to you a lot. The teacher who believed in you, and the grandparents who made us feel safe, seen, cared for, the coach who encouraged us. Those experiences matter too. I have no problems with that. They become part of our emotional foundation. They teach us, or it actually teaches us about trust or confidence, resilience, hope. That's why two people can face similar challenges but respond completely differently. Their experiences taught them different lessons about life. Now, this doesn't mean childhood determines everything. And that's important, because if childhood determined everything, growth will be impossible. Healing will be impossible. Change will actually also be very impossible. But we know people change, right? We see that all the time. We know people heal. It's not a new thing. People heal all the time. We know people overcome incredible obstacles all the time. Understanding childhood isn't about becoming trapped by the past. It is actually about understanding where some of our patterns, these patterns that we have, came from. Because awareness actually creates choice. When you understand why you react a certain way, you gain the power to respond differently. You know, when you understand where a fear originated, you can begin confronting it. When you understand why certain situations trigger you, you can start healing the wound underneath. The goal isn't to stay stuck in childhood. You know, Childhood, sometimes you're an adult, but childhood can still be in your head. The goal is to stop letting childhood um, unconsciously control adulthood. And maybe that one of one of the most courageous things a person can do is what I will actually think about it like that. To look honestly at their story and not this time around with shame or with thoughts about the past in a negative way, but also not with blame, but with curiosity in this sense. To ask questions like, what did I learn? What did I carry from my parents or from the people, my guardians when I was growing up? What still serves me today? What no longer does? Because every one of us is carrying something. Some carry confidence, some carry fear, some even carry resilience, and some carry wounds, but most carry a mixture of them all together combined. The question isn't whether childhood shaped you, because actually it did. The question is whether you'll take the time to understand how. Uh, because the moment you understand your story, you stop being controlled by parts of it that you never actually recognized. And maybe that's where actual healing starts taking place in the first place, not where the past disappears, because it doesn't disappear. But when the past finally makes sense to you, that th- it starts doing something that you start thinking and trying to make sense of it, trying to learn ways that you can think of solving issues of this particular present time. Anyway, I just tend to think that childhood has a lot of things to do with how we grew up. And I know this is so much resonating with all of us because we all have wounds from our childhood experiences and so many things that we grew up, and it still affects our day-to-day lives in one way or another. So if this conversation actually resonated with you, remember this: your childhood may explain you, but it does not define you. That's what I can just say. Your story has influenced who you are, and the kind of person that you are now is who you are right now. If there's something need to change, you really need to do lots of work to check and see the person and try to fish that out. But it doesn't have to decide who you become. In one sense, I can say that. I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching this episode of the Triage Table podcast. I have been your host, Caleb Ngeno, and I hope I will be able to see you again in the next episodes. Peace and take good care of yourselves until the next video. See you.